What is the history of perpendicular lines in geometry? Imagine trying to build a perfect corner or draw a straight cross on paper. How did people figure out how to make those right angles? Well, the story of perpendicular lines goes way back to ancient times. Long ago, civilizations like the Egyptians and Babylonians used simple tools like ropes with knots to measure land and build structures. They knew how to create right angles, even if they didn't write down formal rules. For example, the Egyptians used ropes to make right triangles when building pyramids, ensuring their structures were stable and straight. Then came the Greeks, who turned these practical ideas into a formal science. Thales, often called the first Greek mathematician, studied angles and started thinking about how lines and shapes relate. But it was Euclid, around 300 BCE, who really organized geometry into a clear system. In his famous book called The Elements, Euclid defined what a right angle is and said all right angles are equal. He also explained how lines and angles behave using rules called postulates. For example, Euclid showed how to draw a straight line between 2 points and how to construct a right angle using a compass and straightedge. Euclid's work became the standard for teaching geometry for hundreds of years. He didn't use algebra or coordinates like we do today. Instead, he described everything with shapes and constructions. To show two lines are perpendicular, Euclid would use his tools to create a perfect right angle, making sure the lines crossed at exactly 90 degrees. This method helped people understand and prove when lines are perpendicular without needing complex calculations. Later in the 17th century, the invention of algebra changed how we think about lines. René Descartes introduced the coordinate plane, where every point has an x and y value. This made it easier to describe lines with equations. For example, the slope of a line tells us how steep it is. If two lines have slopes that are negative reciprocals, like 2 and -1/2, they are perpendicular. This algebraic way of thinking made it simple to check if lines are perpendicular just by looking at their slopes, especially when graphing on paper or a computer. Today, perpendicular lines are everywhere in math and real life. When you graph two lines and see they cross at a right angle, you know they are perpendicular. Think about the corners of a room, the lines on graph paper, or the axes that help us measure points. Understanding how perpendicular lines work helps us solve problems involving distances, angles, and shapes, whether we are drawing, building, or analyzing data. So, the story of perpendicular lines begins with ancient tools and practical needs, moves through Greek ideas of shapes and angles, and then becomes clearer with algebra and graphing. Knowing this history helps us see how math ideas connect and build on each other. Whether you are constructing a building, drawing a picture, or solving an equation, understanding perpendicular lines helps you see the world in a more precise way.